1963 was an extremely busy year for Vincent Price. In addition to being father to newly born daughter Victoria, as well as continuing his work as art liaison and spokesman for the Sears Roebuck Company, Price would appear in a total of 6 films on the big screen during that year. The first of those films was released in January of 1963 as audiences found Price back on the big screen with 2 old friends, Boris Karloff and Peter Lorre in The Raven. The film opens with a voiceover by Price reading excerpts from the Edgar Allan Poe poem, The Raven.
Over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore.
We then cut to a lonely seaside castle where we're introduced to Dr. Erasmus Craven, played by Price, a novice but talented magician whose deceased father was the famous and powerful sorcerer Roger Craven. He lives alone in the castle with his daughter Estelle, played by Olive Sturgis. Late one evening, he is visited by a talking black raven, which turns out to be the enchanted form of fellow magician Adolphus Bedloe, played by Peter Lorre. He was turned into a raven as a result of losing a duel with a famous sorcerer named Dr. Scarabus, played by Boris Karloff. With Bedloe's assistance, Craven is able to break the enchantment and return Bedloe to human form. To complete the spell, they have to retrieve a lock of hair from Craven's dead father, whose corpse briefly reanimates and issues a warning from beyond the grave. Bedloe intends to go back to Scarabus's castle to get revenge and retrieve his magical equipment, which he lost there. Craven warns against it as Dr. Scarabus is too powerful. Spying a picture of Craven's wife Lenore, Bedloe informs him that he saw her at Scarabus's castle. Craven suspects that Scarabus has gained control of her spirit and agrees to accompany Bedloe. Estelle catches wind of their plans and demands to accompany them. As they start to leave, they are met by Bedloe's son Rexford, played by Jack Nicholson. He joins the party and they all head for Scarabus's estate. Once there, Craven confronts Scarabus about his wife, but he denies everything and seems perfectly pleasant. He invites them to have dinner with him and to stay the night at his castle as a raging storm has struck. It turns out that Lenore, played by Hazel Court, is in fact there at the castle, but she's far from dead. She's a power-hungry vixen who left Craven to be with Scarabus. We also learn that the entire Raven enchantment was a ploy to lure Craven to the castle. Scarabus actually wants to steal Craven's magical abilities for himself. It all comes to a head and culminates with a clash between Craven and Scarabus in a sorcerous duel to the death. The Raven was directed by Roger Corman and once again written by Richard Matheson. All the Matheson trademark elements are there: a musty seaside castle inhabited by a mourning widower, moldering corpses and coffins, a dead wife returning to life, and a fiery finale. However, unlike the previous Poe films, The Raven is played exclusively for laughs, presented through a quirky sense of humor that's carried over from the Black Cat segment of the previous Poe film, Trilogy of Terror. Interestingly, this is the second film that Boris Karloff appeared in with the title The Raven, the first being the 1935 Universal picture co-starring Bela Lugosi. The 2 films couldn't be more different, however, the title and Karloff's appearance being about the only thing they have in common. Price and Lorre in particular really seem to be having fun with this picture, something that could be witnessed with the amusing exchange between the 2. Much of their dialogue was ad-libbed, something that Karloff, who had come in prepared with a script memorized, had a bit of trouble following.
Well now, gentlemen, I think we are ready to begin. I'm not ready. No.
Next up, Price would appear in another film adapted from classic literature, the 1963 film Diary of a Madman.
Oh, yes, of course.
I love my garden, but I hate weeds. Even poisoning is too good for them. It leaves the roots, and they sometimes resurrect themselves. What you need is something far more sinister, Zero Weed Killer. It actually cuts off the weeds' food supply, and 2 weeks later, they starve to death, roots and all. It's like tying their ravenous little roots into knots. Thank you, Zero.